Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. This is Travis here at the Prepared Homestead. Thank you for stopping by to watch. It always means a lot to me to see people watching and especially commenting. I enjoy those. I know I don't probably get to respond to every one of them because sometimes there's a lot. But I do appreciate the comments and the emails and all that. So thank you and keep them coming. Today's video, I wasn't actually planning on doing this, but in light of things that's happened in the last 24 hours, I decided to go ahead and do it. Kind of springboarding off of the video that I actually posted yesterday, my latest video before this one. And I was talking in that video about how, really in a sense, we are kind of already in a civil war. And that it's different for Americans because our idea of a civil war is really based upon the previous civil war, which was the war between the North and the South. And that particular war was very unique in the world of civil wars because it wasn't really a civil war. It wasn't people within one government fighting for control. It was two separate governments fighting with standing armies. Both governments had standing armies, and they were fighting in typical standard military fashion with each other. It really, in a sense, was not a civil war. It was a standard war of two governments fighting. One government basically fighting for independence, the South. And I'm not here to say who was right or wrong. I'm just talking from a historical perspective. A civil war is different. A civil war are people under the same government fighting for takeover, fighting for revolution, fighting, for instance, the American Revolution was in a way a civil war. That would classify as a civil war. But most civil wars, especially modern ones, you don't typically have standing armies fighting in standard military fashion, using typical military tactics. You usually have little pockets of rebellious people, of people fighting the government, the system, whatever it is, wreaking havoc, burning buildings, looting, destroying property, assaulting people, killing people, a type of guerrilla warfare. And that is what we are seeing here in the United States. And overnight, this situation up in Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin, it is, in my opinion, has become a very near perfect example of a civil war, of a revolution from the left. These Marxist revolutionaries are and I'm completely, without a doubt, believe that they are trying to, spark a communist revolution takeover here in the United States. So for those of you that have not been keeping up on it too much, because it's one of those things that the mainstream news, they just don't like to talk about it. And then when they do, they certainly don't tell anything of the truth. If you were watching the mainstream news, you would hear that the racist, bigoted police officers shot an unarmed black man in the back, and that people are out protesting in the streets against systemic racism. That's basically what they're talking. The truth is, and I'm not even going to get into the case too much, the truth is this guy was a lifelong criminal, had threatened someone with a knife. The police got there, he still was threatening someone with a knife, said that he was going to his car to get a gun. The police tased him. The tasing didn't work. They scuffled and fought with him. He broke free, ran over, opened his door, reached down underneath his seat to get something. And of course he was shot. From my personal background in law enforcement, it seems like a very justified shooting. But that doesn't matter to them. And that's not even really the point of today's video. The point is there is no protesting going on in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And it's not just Wisconsin, it's expanded. I mean, there's been rioting going on for months now. because of George Floyd, claiming George Floyd. But it's like it's rekindled the fire, and I suspect every time someone gets shot like this, it's going to continue doing this until it just erupts all over. There's riots in New York, Louisville, Kentucky, Dallas, Texas. I've seen them, all over in the last 24 hours that they're starting up again. Places that it's kind of calmed down, and they've really exploded into it. But let's just focus on Kenosha, whatever it is, Wisconsin. The things that are going on there, the term rioting doesn't even work. I mean, this is flat out terroristic insurgency that is happening in Wisconsin. The things that are going on, the tactics that are being used are well beyond protesting and even rioting. And again, if you haven't been keeping up on it, it is to a level that I don't even think we saw in Minneapolis a few months ago, or even in Chicago or Philadelphia, and the places where it's gotten really bad. They are burning and destroying virtually every building, just going door to door, destroying buildings. The destruction in that town is at a level that I'm not sure that we've ever seen before here in the United States by our own citizens. The amount of violence, the assaults to individuals. There have been people needing to evacuate neighborhoods because they're coming into neighborhoods. They torched an apartment complex, and there were some people inside. I haven't heard yet the status of some of the residents there. They are now carrying guns. They have formed. I'm sure that's all paid for by these Chinese Marxists and left-wing activist groups. But they have their own militia. And these guys look, on appearance, pretty much like your standard militia that you would see, wearing, military-style clothing, plate carrier vests, carrying AR-15s. I didn't see any close-up shots, but from a distance, they look like your standard militia. And they are with these rioters, these insurgencies. They are. There's been reports possibly of some of them firing their weapons, but that's unconfirmed. But the one thing that I've noticed is that they're protecting the rioters from the police. So when the police engage, they kind of surround them. And I've seen videos where the police are using pretty much every non-lethal option they have. Tear gas, pepper balls, or rubber bullets. They've even been using the sound, big speakers, and none of it's working. And what's happening is when these non-lethal or less than lethal methods are not effective, basically their choice is to just be beaten up by the crowd, engage with them with lethal weapons, or to retreat. And so we're seeing the police retreat over and over again. And sometimes it's because for their own safety, and sometimes I would say it's by the order of their superiors. We can't keep doing this and expect to ever be better or normal or win or anything. If they know now that this behavior, this tactics are effective, because none of these cities, these governments, these police departments want to go to cross that line, take that extra step, crossing that line to engage with them with lethal weapons. And we're seeing police officers get hurt. We're seeing property destruction happen on a massive scale. And we are seeing individual citizens being injured and hurt. Businesses, they burned the Department of Corrections building there. They have been threatening to burn down the county courthouse in that county. It's pretty epic. If you haven't been following it, the best sources that I have found are on Twitter, and these are on the spot, not really reporters, but they're live streamers. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I typically share a lot of this stuff, and I'll warn you, some of it is pretty tough stuff to watch. It's uncensored. There's a video of a bunch of Black Lives Matter people attacking a raccoon that was out on the streets, and they beat the thing to death, bludgeoned it to death. It's quite graphic, and it's very difficult to watch. I mean, we can't even call it that animal behavior, because animals don't even do that. We are seeing a level of hatred and a level of Marxist mentality, and on a level that we have never seen here in the United States, and never probably thought we would see. And the best example in history that I have found that kind of fits within this is probably the communist revolution in China. If you read it, I mean, it definitely went much further, but we're in the beginning stages, and it could certainly get to that point. So all that I've just said brings me back to the point that I truly believe we are at a civil war. If you talked to the people and the residents of that city that has gone through what they have the last few nights and asked them what they felt, there might be some that would support, the ridiculous notion that Black Lives Matter actually stands for social equality. But I would say the majority of them, after living through it, would see that this is a civil war. This is an insurgency. This is a terroristic behavior. This is not, and I don't know why the president just doesn't come out and say it. I guess it's an election year, so we've got to be careful what we say. But this stuff, and this is one area that I feel he's been extremely weak on. You can beat me up for that all you want. I don't care. He's made verbal threats. He's said things, but the actions have been really thin on the things that we've been seeing happen. I understand there was some DHS officers sent to like Portland or whatever, but this kind of stuff cannot be allowed to happen in our country. There is no good that's going to come from this. There is certainly no racial equality that's going to come from this, and for anyone that, for the vast majority of people that weren't racist at all, and some of the people that weren't racist but just were kind of back and forth on things, this could definitely push someone to that extent by saying, well, why should I like people of a different color than me? Look what they're doing. But you have to understand that the people that we're seeing in these videos, the people on the streets, that most of these are paid people, and the ones that aren't paid, they're rounded up because they hate people. And I've watched a lot of these videos of these protests in other cities where they'll actually get to interview some of the protesters and the rioters, and they'll ask where they're from, and they're never from that city, ever. They're never from that. They're busing them in from all over the world, all over the country. The average person on the street, whether they're white, black, brown, yellow, pink, polka dot, striped, whatever, will tell you that they don't agree with this kind of behavior. So why are we allowing it to happen? We're allowing it to happen because there is a part of our system, a part of our government, a part of our leadership, a part of people in this world that are controlling and manipulating things, that have an end goal in sight, know that they could reach that end goal much easier if America came to her knees and adopted this Marxist communist ideology. That as long as we still live under a country that at least has this banner of freedom, this even though it's become very, fictitious, it's become very just not as real as we want it to be. We still live under this idea that we have freedom. And we can, go to the Constitution and say, well, we have this document. Not that anyone actually listens to it anymore. But if we went through a revolution and became a communist country, this Marxism, it would be so much easier to ramrod their radical, progressive, globalist agenda. Things of, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, that kind of stuff could happen much easier if we had a lot less freedoms, right? Those kinds of things would happen easier if the government had more authority over us. And so that's why I think these power of the people that are in power, and these governments that are trying to rule the world. We know that the Chinese are definitely fighting for global domination. They're all supporting this stuff. The vast majority of the people on the right that are in office are deadly silent, and it's a shame. I don't get into politics on this channel hardly at all, but I'm telling you, if there's some good, decent Republican, running against an incumbent Republican, I'd vote for him just to get the incumbent out of office. There's hardly a person in political office on any kind of federal level in Congress that I wouldn't give you 2 cents for any of them, because they don't care. They know that they can't win. I guess at least that's what they think, and they're just going to sit there and lick the boots of the oppressors and hope that they, in the end, will get a prominent position in the new globalist government. It's sickening. They're just as much sellouts as the left is. At least the left is open about it. Folks, I'm rambling, mostly because I'm highly aggravated at the things that I've seen, I watched this morning, and read that's going on in parts of this country. This country that was founded on freedom, that people fought and bled and died so that you and I can have and live in a free nation, a nation that acknowledges our natural rights, our natural God-given rights. It doesn't give us those rights. We have a government, or at least we should, that acknowledges them and says, yes, you do have these, and we can't cross that line. And now that's all changed. And it's been changing for years, but it's way more rapid now. They don't care about you. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about your liberty. They only care about their agenda. And I believe that many of these people that are pushing this, they're not going to stop until every tiny little speck of dust of American patriotism, of liberty and freedom and the Constitution and morality and our based on our religious and godly and biblical principles are completely wiped away. They don't want any of it. And they're going to ramrod this stuff right down our throats. So we've got to stop looking at this as protesters and even rioters. This is civil war, folks. And just because it hasn't come to you in your neighborhood or your part of the country doesn't mean it's not happening. These people are Marxist insurgents, and they are pushing for a communist revolution and acting and engaging in civil war tactics with American citizens and American law enforcement. It's time we take a stand and become better ready. If you are not, you should be doing everything within your power to be ready, because it could very, very easily come to you. All right, folks. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.